Happy New Year, everyone. I'm sure we all have New Year's resolutions of things we'd like to do in 2025. But today, at the risk of sounding negative, I want to talk about a few things to avoid in 2025. Well, I'll be avoiding them anyway. I think avoiding these things will really help you to shape your wardrobe into something you absolutely love, and also save you some money on the way. These are of course just my opinions, there's no right or wrong here, and I do realise the irony of me making a video telling you what you don't need. You may find these helpful, you may totally disagree. Let's just get into it and see what happens. Must-haves, essentials, things every guy needs. There's so many websites, posts and videos out there telling you what you should and shouldn't buy. And to make matters worse, they often conflict, telling you that you need completely opposite things. I'm guilty of this as well, by the way. I've made these videos before and will probably make more in the future. However, I think you should avoid them, mostly, or at least take them with a big grain of salt. The thing that you need to understand is that they are so subjective to the person who is making them. So even if I tried to be as broad as possible with an essentials video, it would still inevitably reflect my own personal tastes. Now, that's not always a bad thing, especially if you find a creator or author you trust and your styles really align. But I've found that a lot of this type of content is often very generic and outdated. Don't get me wrong, they can be a great source of information, especially for people who are feeling a bit lost, so I wouldn't avoid them altogether, but I also wouldn't take them as gospel and copy them one for one. I think it's best to use them as a basis for ideas and inspiration, to build upon your existing rotation and really help you find your personal style. Next up is a pretty obvious one by now. I don't think you need to follow all the trends in 2025. If you watched my previous video talking about the best and worst trends of 2024, then you'll know my opinion already. A lot of the biggest trends at the beginning of 2024 were pretty much dead by the end of the year, in my eyes anyway. So if I had bought into them at the start and then decided later in the year I didn't like them anymore because the trends had moved on, then that would have resulted in a lot of wasted money. Every year there seems to be at least one big novelty item that becomes mega hyped for a few months, and everyone wants it so that they can get a good Instagram photo. Some recent examples off the top of my head are things like the big red boots, the crochet check beanies, and the metallic shoes. They vary in price, but they all tend to share the same destination: the bin. Very few people seem to actually wear these things in everyday outfits, and they can't sell them on because the hype has died down or the market is just oversaturated with dupes. So they often end up going to waste. And that's why a lot of the time I avoid trends, especially the really hyped ones, because they tend to have the shortest life cycle. Like with a lot of things though, trends can be great in moderation. They can add an element of fun to an existing wardrobe or be a gateway into a new style. But in 2025, I'm going to be really picky about the ones I actually buy into, if any at all. Next up, in 2025, I personally wouldn't bother trying to get an outfit for every social occasion. A lot of this comes down to personal lifestyle and understanding what clothes you actually require. It took me a while to accept the fact that I live a very particular lifestyle. Very casual, with practicality, functionality and comfort being key. I'm not going to photo shoots, red carpet events or high profile occasions all the time. I also don't work in an environment which requires me to wear really smart or formal clothing. So for me to spend a lot of money on something like a tailor-made suit or bespoke handcrafted shoes would make very little sense. Now of course, if smart streetwear is your style and you think you'll be able to get a lot of use out of these pieces in a casual setting, then by all means go for them. I've started to dabble in that style a bit, so I'm pairing my loafers and derbies with my casual clothes quite a lot. Therefore, I don't mind spending a bit more on those specific pieces because I know I'm going to get use out of them. However, I'm not going to buy something just in case I might need it or want to wear it one day. Not only would that cost a lot of money, but it would cause a lot of unnecessary clutter as well. I find it a lot less stressful on the mind and wallet to just take things as they come. Next up, I think the majority of us can get away with not needing a wardrobe for each season. Yes, a small amount of people may need this if they live in a country with extreme weather conditions. And of course there's some very obvious seasonal clothing like short shorts for summer and big chunky jumpers for winter. But I've known people who will have 2 or 3 completely different sets of wardrobes that they will dedicate to different seasons, and I honestly think that's overkill for the majority of us. Where the most extreme variations we'll probably see are a bit of rain, a colder winter, and a hotter summer. With a bit of consideration and intention, you can be really clever with the pieces you buy and ensure that they can be worn most of the year. Actually, to be honest, most people's basic wardrobe can cover all seasons if you really think about it. For example, a lot of woolen pieces are actually very wearable in both the hot and the cold. It'll depend on the thickness, of course, but a light to mid-weight woolen top would be great on its own in the summer, or as a layering piece in the winter. Wool has natural temperature regulating properties which make it very versatile. Wider flowy pants are another example. They're obviously very suitable for winter, but also you can wear them in summer with just a short sleeve tee and a baseball cap. Boots are another one for me. They're always put into the winter clothing category, but I wear all my boots all year round these days. The point of all this is that you could buy some really versatile clothes that will save you both money and space. If you followed me for any amount of time, you'll probably have heard me talk about this next one. For the majority of the time, I don't think it's worth sticking to gender-specific rules when it comes to clothing in 2025. I think just about any piece of clothing can be worn by just about anyone. I started buying from the women's section a long time ago because I noticed that with a lot of regular clothing like hoodies, sweaters and jackets, they fit me a lot better due to the shorter length, and this has become more and more apparent over the years. Men's and women's clothing has basically blended into one. I'd say most things could be considered unisex now. My favourite pair of pants from 2024 were the women's Uniqlo pleated wide pants. They fit absolutely perfectly, and I know a lot of other guys who have bought them and agree with me. Another bonus for us guys is that women's clothing tends to be a lot cheaper and also easier to get hold of than the men's equivalent. It's actually a bit of a fashion hack, especially when shopping for second-hand or vintage clothing. For example, the women's vintage Carhartt jackets fit me like a dream. They look identical to the men's and are easier to get hold of for a bargain because they're hidden away in the women's section. So yeah, in 2025, I'd encourage you to just try ignoring what's on the label and wear what fits you well. This last one sort of interacts with all the other points on this video, and I'm mainly talking about myself when I say this. I need to stop being so chronically online. This essentially means spending so much time online that you begin to think that the things that are happening online reflect the world as a whole, when in reality they often don't, especially in fashion. It's easy to get into a chronically online bubble when it comes to clothing. You see all your favourite influencers wearing the same thing and think that's what everyone must be wearing. And I know I've felt a social pressure to buy into those things to try and keep up, but in reality it's probably only those 10 to 20 people you're following who are actually wearing that thing. I guess what I'm trying to say is don't worry if what you're seeing online is different to your own personal style and tastes. Social media is a fantastic tool for inspiration and entertainment. And of course, I really hope you keep following and watching my videos because I love doing this and interacting with you. But it's not always representative of real life. Use social media to your advantage rather than allowing it to take a lead. So there's a few guidelines that I'll be following in 2025 to make sure I get the best out of my clothing purchases. As I said at the beginning, these are just specific to me. They may or may not work for you. I'd love to know if you've got anything different that you'll be trying in 2025. But anyway, hopefully you found some value from this video, or at least found it a bit entertaining. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ta-ra.